Hi, my name is Pang Mua. I'm a Wallin advisor here. I've been advising scholars here for a little over 4.5 years. I myself was a Wallin scholar, so I'm an alumna, and so proud to be working for one of my alma maters. And Hi, my name is Pang Mua. I am an advisor here at Wallin. I've been supporting and advising scholars for a little over 4.5 years. I'm also a Wallin alumna, so I received the scholarship as a high school senior. I went to St. Kate's, and so I'm really proud to be working for my alma mater. So when I went to college, I was a first-generation college student, Pell eligible. And I knew I wanted to go to college, but I really wasn't sure once I arrived what would happen and what I would need. I went to orientation, my parents dropped me off, and they left. They waved goodbye. Later on that afternoon, I realized there's a whole program for parents, and I wasn't aware of that. And so now when I get to advise college students, I'm asking about the highlights and lowlights of orientation. I remember my first day in college going through the syllabus. I didn't even know what a syllabus was. And now I get to sit with my scholars and walk through syllabus, the grading systems. But not only that, I get to check in on their life as a commuter, what they're doing outside of classes, other commitments to family, to work, to friends, and to their community. And so, yes, I check in on classes and registration, but I'm also looking to see overall how are they doing in the other areas of their life. So I know that many and all of my scholars have access to Google, and they can tune into people who are way smarter than I am, way more capable than I am. But the one thing that I offer to my scholars time and time again is somebody who's there to hear and check in on how they're doing, ask honest and curious questions. My hope really is that students feel seen and heard and validated. I think the most meaningful thing about my work as an advisor with Wallin scholars is walking alongside these young adults in this sacred but also significant season in their life. And so they're stepping out of their comfort, which is high school and middle school, and into a completely new world of college. Majority of our scholars are first-generation college students, also BIPOC. And so I get to sit and witness how they grow, how they develop, what values they hold tightly to, but maybe new values that they adopt. And I think the most beautiful part is I get to witness firsthand a young adult become who they want to be while also holding on to all of their memories. So one of the biggest ways that I build trust with my scholars is my personality. I am definitely an extrovert, but I'm also naturally curious. And I think at the end of the day, every individual wants to be known and understood. They're curious to see, is somebody interested in them, hearing their narrative and their life story. And so when I sit down with my scholars, every part of my being is demonstrating to them that they have my undivided attention. Not only that, when I first meet a scholar, I'm doing my homework, and so I'm looking to see what high school they attended, what sports did they participate in, did they work 25 hours of a job somewhere, so that when I enter into that meeting, I already have a beginning to a picture of who they are, and they always feel so cherished when I remember these little details about them. And from there, the trust starts to blossom, and that's where they start to share just honest fears, nerves, and anxieties about college, but also their excitements, what they're interested in, what they're looking forward to. And so once they start to share that, it communicates to me, okay, the trust is there, the rapport has been established, and we can launch from there. The reality is I work with 4-year scholars, and so first years, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And the first years, they're thrilled to be in college. They're ready, they're gung-ho, they have the can-do attitude. My sophomores, their goal is I gotta do better than last year. And then the juniors are just surviving. They're first year into their program, it's chaotic. And then my seniors are ready to just leave. They're ready to bounce and exit college. And so because of that, I also approach each meeting and enter each meeting with that framework in mind, so that when I enter into the meeting, I can engage accordingly to the season of college they're in. And then as I meet with them, I pay attention to their attitudes and their emotions and whatever story it is that they're sharing. Sometimes if it's a message of, I can't do this, I'm a failure, what's gonna be the future for me, I am attuning to some sense and presence of shame. And so that's when we unpack some emotions, and then I encourage and invite them to look ahead with me. Now, some of my scholars have a different reaction. Sometimes their response is, I'm entering into something new, I'm feeling some imposter syndrome, I don't know if this is something I can do, but I've been accepted to this incredible internship. And so from there, I invite them to look to the past to see their accomplishments, what they've gained, and essentially to say, you're not an imposter, you didn't fake it till you make it, you have some real skills, and you will achieve this. And so that's some of the ways of how I adapt and shift depending on what my scholar needs. I think our political state, especially here in Minnesota, I truly feel like we are living in unprecedented times. During COVID, I felt that I had to be strong for my students and stay present and figure my personal things out on my own, but put on a front and let's communicate to students and scholars that everything was okay. But in this start of this year and in this season, I've invited myself to be human, to let them know that I was hurting, express some of my fears, and share with them some of the practices that I was doing to feel and remain healthy and whole in this season. And by doing that, my scholars are willing to be honest with me about their fears and their hopes and explore practices that helps them be or feel whole and healthy as well. I think one of the biggest differences about Wallin and advising for Wallin scholars compared to academic advising is that my agenda is really to support the scholar, not Wallin, not the institution, but the student. And so when I enter into a meeting, if the scholar wants to discuss classes and their academics and study habits, that's what we're talking about. But if it's about that late night shift that was exhausting and stressful and chaotic, well, then we're talking about their job. If family has some serious concerns, needs, or if a scholar has experienced grief and loss, we're talking about what is most important to them. And if we get to classes and grades, we'll get to them. And if we don't, we'll get to them at the next meeting. And so in this space, my true desire is to cultivate a space where they can be human and discuss things related to home, school, work, or anything else that is important to them. Wallin's model of advising works. When I was at St. Kate's as an undergrad, I received the Wallin Scholarship. But at the time, that's all I received was the scholarship. There was no advising, no career support. And I often tell my scholars, I wish I had a me for me when I was in college. It's one thing to receive the scholarship and gain access to college, but once I received a seat at the table, I didn't know what to do at the table. And so the beauty of how Wallin has expanded their offerings and support to scholars is now that our scholars are at the table, they have academic advisors, but they also have me as a scholar advisor to come and support them, let them know what the seat at the table feels like, what it may sound like, what it may look like. And then from there, I never assumed that their experience is identical to mine, but I'm always aiming for asking questions that are truly beneficial to them so that they can explore their own experiences and make meaning of their experiences. As you enter into college as a Wallin scholar, my hope is that you would hold tightly to your true and authentic self, and at the same time step courageously into this new season of your life and accept this new person who you will become and also who you are becoming at the same time. Welcome to the Wallin community.
As far as Wallin's model of advising, one thing we use a lot is the term holistic or wraparound. And I think what that means for me and the importance of that is that we are here to help the student with whatever it is that they need. So whatever issues a student brings to us, our job is to help them to navigate that, to figure out what it means for them, and to help them find the solutions that work to help solve their problems. But it's a collaborative effort, and I think that's probably one of the most important things about the work that we do. When I think of Wallin's advising and what makes us different, I think one of the biggest things is that we provide holistic and wraparound support. And what that means is that no matter what the issue a scholar might bring to us, it's our role to help them to figure out how to solve that issue, how to progress through it, what it means for them, and really help them build a plan to succeed in whatever the endeavor might be. And I think the Wallin gives us the time and the ability to do that by working with scholars for such a long part of their career. When I reflect back on my story as a college student, I very much tried to do it on my own. My parents were first generation college students, so I was second generation, and I felt like I knew enough to not have to look for help, but I could very much use it. And my college career was very back and forth and up and down, and I spent a lot of time trying to navigate it myself. And one of the things I talk with scholars about a lot is being willing to search for help, to be honest about the things that you don't know, to be honest about the things that you want to know, and to partner with me and Wallin in general to be able to find those things and to persevere through a system that oftentimes is not built for you. I think it's the relationships that I get to build with scholars, being able to work with them from right after their graduation high school all the way through to graduation of college and beyond. I work with alumni still that call me years after graduation to talk about job searches or interview prep, or what to do in a career change. And those kinds of relationships in college they're few and far between as far as administrators and what you get to do with students and what you get to see as far as the growth. And so for me, especially as a Wallin advisor, that's really the goal for me is that relationship and how long it gets to last and how powerful it can be. The first step for me in building trust with scholars at Wallin is listening to them and validating their experiences and validating their hopes, their goals, their dreams, while also working with them to understand that as they progress through college, that they are themselves going to change as people. And a lot of times that initial goal that you set for yourself, by the time you get there, you're a different person. And so helping them with those kinds of transitions and those kinds of pivots, is just great. Helping myself to know what they need, it's asking really good open-ended questions and spending a lot of time listening to what they have to say. One of the practices that I use is something called clean language coaching, and that's where I make a concerted effort to repeat back to students the terms and the words that they're using so that I can understand when they're saying something to me, what exactly it is that they mean. We all have a shared language, but we don't always have a shared vocabulary as far as what those words mean to each other. And so helping students to clarify that, not only for me, but a lot of times help them to clarify it for themselves by talking more about it and really diving deeper into whatever it is that is taking place that they want to talk about. I think the most important thing about Wallin versus other advising models is the quality of the relationship that we can build. We have smaller cohorts than most advisors do on a college campus, so I can have much more interaction with scholars and much more quickly. So if a scholar has an interview 2 days from now, I can oftentimes very quickly schedule, a mock interview or schedule a meeting to talk about what they want to make sure that comes across in those interviews. And then I think also Wallin's flexibility when working with scholars. I've never worked at an institution like Wallin where instead of finding reasons why we can't help students, we're always looking for reasons that we can, and always trying to find new ways to help scholars as opposed to just saying like, well, we tried. And that is always something I've really much appreciated about Wallin. One of the things that I hope new scholars get from not only their advisor, but from Wallin in general, is the understanding that someone has their back, that someone and an entire institution is looking out for them and thinking about them all the time. I sometimes remind scholars when I first meet with them that my job is to think about them 40 hours a week or more. And their job is not to think about me 40 hours a week or more, but sometimes I forget that. And so, letting them know that we're here for them, that we have supports for them, and that if there is a problem that we can't solve, that we're gonna help them look for someone that can. And I think for a lot of scholars, especially first generation students, just having that kind of assurance can help them feel better about themselves and about their career in college when things maybe don't go perfectly or don't go the way they planned. Welcome scholars to the Wallin community. We're excited to have you and we're looking forward to working with you.
Hi, my name is Joel Navam. I use he, him pronouns, and I've been a Wallin Scholar Advisor for around 4 years now. I have a background in higher education, been working at different universities and colleges for about 9 years, and I really enjoy supporting students as a Wallin Scholar Advisor. What makes Wallin's advising model unique is that we are relationally centered and focus on student empowerment. So a lot of our students have academic advisors, they might have mental health counselors, and so as a Wallin advisor, I'm stepping in to relationally support students so that they can be empowered to make better decisions. So this has often looked like even sharing personal experiences from my own life as a way to support students. And that might be a unique aspect of advising because usually in an advising setting, you don't often get to share from your own personal life. So I'm talking about how I struggled during my first year as a first-generation college student in the US. I'm talking about how I might have also dropped out of school, or how I navigated being a student athlete and was able to join the honors program. So as I'm sharing these moments of vulnerability from my own life, I'm actually empowering Wallin scholars to also be able to succeed in their higher education journey. So I think that's what makes Wallin's advising unique. So I grew up attending international schools in India and South Korea. So when I meet scholars who hold multiple identities, whether they're based on age, gender, culture, or socioeconomic status, I recognize that those are complex backgrounds. So when I'm entering into a relationship with a student as an advisor, I'm finding ways to really empathize with where they're coming from and also recognizing what unique needs they might have during their higher education journey. I know for me, belonging has been a huge theme in my own life. And so as I meet new scholars and continue maintaining relationships with current scholars, I'm always trying to assess how can I help this scholar belong in their higher education environment, and how can they bring their full authentic selves into their higher education journey. I think what feels most meaningful to me is being able to witness a student's growth and development throughout their academic trajectory. So I have scholars who will be graduating this spring with their bachelor's degrees, And I actually knew them 4 years ago when they were starting at a 2-year institution. And then they might not have known what their major was going to be. They selected a major, and then they graduated with an associate's degree. And then they successfully transferred to a 4-year institution, and now they're going to be walking across the commencement stage with a bachelor's degree. So I consider it a major privilege to be able to see our scholars through from the very beginning until the very end. And I feel so honored to be able to be a part of that journey for them. I think it's so different for every student, so it really varies from student to student. For some students, we just click right away. We're making jokes, we're talking about our hobbies immediately. For other students, it takes at least 3 to 4 sessions to where we feel like we can be authentic in our connection. I think I like to gauge how a student is by modeling my own form of vulnerability. So I think I often will maintain professionalism and also share about my own background and about my life, about my higher education experiences. So when a scholar sees me model that, they're much more likely to also share about their life and what they're going through in college. So I think if I need to ask further questions and be open-minded in my curiosity about a scholar, I attempt to do that, and then I try to mix in my own personal experiences to make them feel more comfortable. I think it takes time. It is a gradual process, and I think at Wallin we emphasize investing that time and what I would call quality time and energy into really getting to know students and their stories. I think when it comes to adapting to scholars' needs and responding to their narratives and experiences, I think it is simpler than one might think. I think the easiest way to gauge that is to simply ask. I think I like to ask, hey, like, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? What are some of your short-term and long-term goals? And now I know that a lot of scholars might not know the response to some of those questions. So if they don't have a response to those questions, I'm able to sort of ask simpler questions just to express curiosity about their interests and about their experiences. And so once I can gauge their level of response, then I can adapt to what they need. So some scholars might need more direct, constructive feedback. We call that prescriptive advising in the biz, where you give folks information by telling them what to do. And then the other side of the spectrum is more developmental advising, which is where you gently question and coach students to developing solutions to their own problems, believing that they actually contain answers to their complex problems within themselves. So as a coach or as an advisor, I'm trying to find ways to ask good questions and practice active listening to really be able to draw out what those small changes can be for their lives. And I think it takes an advisor who's very adaptable, who's able to meet students who have different needs. And so I think the individualized wraparound support looks like truly meeting a scholar where they are, being really curious about what they need, and then stepping in to support those needs. I think I'm always striving to encourage scholars to become critical thinkers who are open-minded. I think I like to emphasize having dialogue across differences and being able to engage people with different perspectives and different viewpoints. I think a big change in our context right now is that we have a lot of access to information through social media and through artificial intelligence. And so I think I'm wanting to empower students with tools that help them articulate their opinions and thoughts in a way that feels respectful, in a way that engages other people. I think with being mindful about what's going on in the United States and around the world, it's really important for scholars to know that they have a unique voice to contribute to the discussion. So I'm always trying to find ways to both challenge and support scholars' thoughts and feelings in a way that makes them feel bold and confident to engage the world where we're at right now. So I would define it as college advising is helping students register for courses and navigating college campus resources. So that's your basic form of advising. I think of Wallin's advising model as taking that a step further. So not only are we very aware and resourceful when it comes to college campus resources, but now we are wanting to provide holistic advising for students. Also, a good definition for holistic advising is comprehensive support that encompasses social, academic, personal, career, and developmental needs. And so I'm thinking about ways in which we can essentially look at a student and ask, like, are they set up for success when it comes to their career development? Are they navigating personal issues with smart thinking and being able to make good decisions? How are they navigating complex cultural identities that come into their lives from their homes or from their higher education experiences? Another example I can think of is how higher education is often set up in a very individualized way, and a lot of our scholars might come to higher education from a more communal cultural background where we're more dependent on family and community and friends. So how does a scholar navigate this individualized mindset or environment of higher education while bringing in a more communal sense of cultural identity? So I think we are able to really get into those nuances of how students are experiencing higher education beyond sort of the basic advising approach. I believe Wallin's model works because our mission is to essentially equip Wallin scholars to be able to enter into the workforce with all the skills that they might need to be successful upon graduation. So not only are we providing really in-depth support during their higher education journey, but we want scholars to be really successful even after they graduate college and when they're in the workplace. So I think we are in a unique position through developing relationships with scholars to be able to really empower them to become incredible decision makers on their own. So for me, at the end of an advising relationship, I feel really happy if I know that my scholar does not need me anymore. Because I feel like if I do my job well as an advisor, I have helped them develop a toolkit that enables them to make really good decisions. Again, after they're through with their Wallin advisor relationship, they are truly able to be self-sufficient and make smart decisions on their own toward being really successful beyond graduation. I hope that you try new things, build new connections, and develop an incredible network to support your growth during these next few years. I really wish that you take advantage of all the opportunities in front of you and learn to make effective decisions in your future. Welcome to the Wallin community. 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 Yes, I'm so excited for you all. Welcome to the Wallin community.
When I think about introducing someone to Wallin, I think of its services as a relational approach to advising, which to me is getting to know the person, not just the student, the person as a community member, as a family member, as a friend, and of course also as a student. And so that looks like listening to them and finding out who they are based off of their own perspective. And then figuring out with them, who do they want to be, where do they want to go, and helping them build the steps to get there. And always remembering that who they are is a collective of all of the experiences they've had, all of the people that they know, and all of the people they will know, and all of the experiences they will have. And so advising to me is fitting into that picture as a support system to them, and sometimes that looks like figuring out what's happening in the classroom, what they need to do to get that grade that they're looking for. And sometimes that looks like navigating interpersonal problems or figuring out how what's happening in the rest of their life is impacting who they are in the classroom. And so to me, it's really just getting to know the student as a person, letting them get to know me as a person, and then co-creating an experience for them based off of that. What feels most meaningful to me about being an advisor is the moments that are more challenging, getting to be there for someone in those times, because it makes me reflect a lot about my experience in college and the moments that I really wish I had someone to just talk to at times. And so knowing that if there's nowhere else a student feels like they can go to, or no one else they feel like they can ask this question to, that space and that person can always be me. Not because I always have the answers, but because I am consistently present in their life and in their academic journey. So it's really rewarding to me to be that person and that space, and to cultivate a relationship where it feels safe for them to do that. I think the current moment in time that we're in calls for a lot more vulnerability from students and from advisors, because it's a lot harder to separate who we are in the classroom and who we are in the rest of our lives, when the rest of our lives in the classroom space is so impacted by what's happening in the world. And that shows up again in the ways that we're able to be a student, be a friend, be a community member. And so it requires me to be more honest about how it's impacting my life, so that my students can also be honest, and we can kind of figure out what that looks like for each of them individually when we're able to be honest about how it's impacting us. The Wallin advising model is different to me from traditional college advising, because I often tell students that I don't work for the institution that they go to, and so there is no reason that I need to prioritize that institution. My goal is to prioritize them, their goals, and their goals can look like whatever they want them to be. And so knowing that they are my priority, I think helps students shed some of the concerns that they have about what angle I might be coming from. And so I think Wallin's advising is really helpful because it's an external advising perspective that focuses on centering the student and what they want. I think Wallin's model works because it is not prescriptive. It's realistic in the sense that our advisors are intentional about having a diverse array of experiences and identities that work with our students that also hold a diverse array of experiences and identities, and they might not have access to perspectives that are diverse in their institutions, but they have access to perspectives that might mirror some of their identities with our advisors. I also think the model works again because we don't have one exact formula for how we do advising. Yes, we have some foundational key elements that we might use, but the ways in which we approach advising is in a way that we're also allowed to show that we are humans and people, and our personalities are a part of that. And so when students get to know me as a person, I think that allows them to better work with me as an advisor and to show up as not just my student, but as a full person with all types of unique components that come with that and a personality of their own. And so I think that's what makes Wallin's model work, is that it's just two people creating an experience together. When I think of the incoming Wallin Scholar class, I think the biggest advice that I have is that you are going to get so much advice from everyone, from media that you consume to people that you know personally. And I just want to say that your story is your own, and you can create that story by taking in information, but you can also leave advice or information that isn't pertinent to you and take your own path. You can create your own path, you can follow paths that exist, but at the end of the day, it's your story, and so don't be afraid to filter through the noise of everything else and make your journey your own ultimately. Welcome, Wallin community. We're so excited to have you. Welcome to the Wallin community.